Mercy is a frustrating hero. So let's change that. So Mercy is not the same hero that she was at launch, and she's gone through plenty of ups and downs meta-wise over the years. The basics of her kit have stayed the same, but her playstyle has kind of changed drastically depending on what patch she was good in. Um, it's been years since you've been able to fly it or just leave a fight completely and then fly in and get five. Those days of playstyle of complete passive are gone. But even with that changed in her reworks, she continues to be a bit of a pain point and can really make the game frustrating for the enemy, but also even your team when you have her. So just general housekeeping stuff out of the way. As always, I don't work at Blizzard. I don't know what's possible. But we are just going to go ahead and assume that anything that I say is theoretically feasible, time, money, engine wise, any of that. We'll just complete creative exercise. And the only thing we'll take into consider is just kind of like practicality. But I'm not going to give somebody 15 abilities. So, and then of course, as always, the exact numbers don't matter. I'll generally just generalize them to like, oh, it's a longer cooldown or it's a very short amount of time. I'm not a balancer. Like the numbers, I don't want to get caught in the semantics of numbers, so we'll just completely ignore that. We'll just talk about general long and short. Real quick, if you guys find yourself liking this video by the end of it or even in the middle of it, if you wouldn't mind giving me a follow, subscribe, like all that good YouTube stuff, it really does help me out. And it also shows me what you guys like. And, if you have any ideas, you can also send a comment. I would really appreciate all of that. But I'll get out of your hair and I'll get on with that rework discussion. What's at the core of Mercy, okay? Sorry for this really crunchy picture. This is directly from Blizzard's website, I think. Survivability through movement, I think, is a key gameplay loop that has stuck with her the entire time, right? Guardian Angel's on a really low cooldown. She's able to heal herself when she heals her allies, and she used to just heal herself over time. Survivability, moving around, ducking in and out of cover to keep herself alive. That's really the core gameplay philosophy of Mercy, right? She's one more, or like basically on a character thematic level, she's a guardian angel, right? You'll see many, she's supposed to like swoop in and res or swoop in and save somebody. That's kind of like what she's kind of getting at. She's supposed to, swoop in and save the day, whatever. But outside of that, idea, she's not really a savior. Her heal beam is a fairly powerful, consistent heal that doesn't really save anybody. It just kind of like extends how long they can be alive. It's not like a big bat burst where all of a sudden you're at 5 health and now you have 75 because you hit a big shot. It's really more of like it's just going to tick up and up and up. Damage boost again is not really a savior ability. It's proactive. It's trying to enable people and prevent them from being saved in the first place, which maybe is kind of character, maybe Mercy's actual character. It kind of fits in that, like, oh, I don't really want to save you, whatever. But again, the idea of like being that guardian angel that comes in and saves the day, I feel like just doesn't come across in her gameplay loop. But at her most fun, Mercy flies around and bounces between targets and gives them right buff, trying to give them the right buff all the time, healing or damage. But at her worst, she is designated to one person that she has to sit on all the time, and her success is determined by their success. Can you guess which one is the most prominent version nowadays? So let's start with the part of her kit that works, her movement. And in fact, I'm going to go off script here because I actually changed this. I initially wanted to replace her movement with her old movement. Basically none of that slingshot stuff. It was go forward, either you cancel it or keep going, or you pop in the air. That's what I wanted initially. But when I kept thinking about it, about how that would work with the stuff I've changed, I actually decided to go ahead and keep the movement that she has right now. Because you're not going to be as encouraged to only ever play passive with her anymore. And we'll get into why. We're going to increase the cooldown slightly, very slightly. Half a second, one more second, maybe, right? Very, very slight increase to the cooldown. Just because her cooldown is actually going to be more valuable because I'm giving her a new passive. Gone, I don't even know what it's called. Gone is that passive where she heals herself when she heals her allies. Now it is replaced with something that I like to call Advancing Angel. And what this means is that when she is flying forward, basically when she is looking in the direction that she is flying, she actually gets a healing boost or a damage boost. And we'll talk about what both of those look like because both of those have changed. But basically the idea behind this, and this is going to be a big theme for most of her kit, is that I want Mercy to get in the fight. I want Mercy to put herself at risk to save people, to do the value that she wants. I don't really want her hiding behind corners. I want you being encouraged to use your movement and also make decisions about when you're moving, right? So that's really, really what I'm getting at here. I want you to be moving as much as you possibly can and min-maxing while you're moving. Where you go, where you look, I think is crucial. So keep this in mind as we go along. I will also bring it up when we get to those points. So first, let's talk about the Caduceus staff, right? Thematically, thematically with her staff, I want there to be mode swapping, right? I think that I was gonna initially just get rid of damage entirely, but I think it's crucial to Mercy and like her identity that she has some sort of swap. And it keeps her much more active between, her movement, which is good, right? Like we want to encourage active gameplay. So what I've done is it's no longer a beam, okay? It's no longer a beam. What it's going to be is that we're going to give her a little bit of burst healing, which can be dangerous, but hear me out. I think it would work pretty similar to Life Weaver's heal. You kind of have to charge it for a second and then it bursts over to them. But not nearly as much. So it's like more rapid, lesser heals, but but more consistent. Okay. So it's still like you're getting the burst, like a regular consistent amount of healing. And the thing that throws the wrench into this, of course, is Advancing Angel, because while you're advancing, when you're flying forward, you would be doing more healing. So now you have to kind of determine when do I want to use my cooldown and when do I want to give a bigger burst than I usually do to save somebody, or when are they going to need that the most? That's kind of what I'm thinking here. That's why we keep it lower, so it's like really not too effective when she's not flying or like advancing. But once she is trying to get in the fight, and again, remember, when you're flying forward, you are inherently putting yourself more at risk and getting closer to your target. So you're putting yourself more in the open, more in danger to get more healing. Now, obviously, that's not going to always how it is. If she's behind a wall, then she's not going to, not going to do as much. But I do want it to be fairly short range so that she does have to get closer in general to get to people. I don't want her just being like super far back, and then she just flies forward and cancels it, and like that's just effectively the same thing. Like I do want her to get closer and closer to her target so that she's a little bit more susceptible to danger. But basically, this should allow Mercy to have a little bit of regular playmaking potential in her regular kit. Like even if she doesn't have abilities, I think a lot of supports like BAP and Ana, theirs are more aim oriented, but if you hit a good burst of your regular heal, you just have good aim, or whatever, you can still like protect people and save them from afar without having to use abilities, and I think that feels really, really good. I wanted to bring a little bit of that to Mercy. Not too much, not to the level of those two, but a little bit of that here. And then, of course, Caduceus staff has to swap. And, traditionally, it is a blue beam. It's you put it on a target and they get a damage boost. Let's get rid of that. The blue beam now works a little differently. It's no longer attaching to people. It is now a beam type weapon for Mercy. So, like Sim, like Zarya, just really close range. Like, I mean really close, okay? In the same way with Advancing Angel, it will do a little more damage, and it does not do much. Let's be clear, it does not do a lot of damage, but it'll do a little more damage when you're going forward, right? What is this? Why make this over damage boost? Damage boost is much more, effective. It's more usable, right? The idea here is that I think Mercy needs a little bit more agency when she wants to aggress, right? Because right now, when you damage boost somebody, you're relying on them to hit shots and them to do most of the work. And it can be hard to feel your value come through when somebody else isn't doing isn't lifting up their end of the bargain. So, fuck that. Let's just give Mercy her own way to deal damage. And now she has some decision making when she flies in. You used to be able to do I want to heal them or do I want to blue beam them through the duel? Usually, it kind of was just heal because they just have way more effective health than the person they're dueling. But now, you can kind of make the decision to, if you catch somebody really early in a fight, instead of using your healing, why not just try to mow them down instead, right? It's just being more fun for Mercy, and again, it adds more risk because the range is really, really close. And it's not burst damage either. You just kind of come in. It's honestly like focusing beam, but way reeled in and doesn't scale. You know what I mean? Think of it like that. Echo kind of has to come in and get a focusing beam and then try and get out. I think that's what I want with Mercy, but again, way less effective. But again, put that with the passive, and you're encouraged to go forward and actually do it because you'll get more damage. And I think that would be really, really interesting. Now that I've talked about both of them, when you consider with the new passive and everything and her movement, now you're actually making some interesting decisions about how you move, right? No longer are you only I'm going to go forward, then slingshot backwards so I'm safe, or forward and slingshot up, so I'm safe or whatever. Now you're thinking, how do I press my movement? How do I push my advantage? How do I press my luck on my movement, right? Now it's okay, I can dash forward and use my teammate to propel me to somebody else so that I get more healing, right? Oh, they're out of my GA range, but I can use my teammate to GA past them, and I'm still advancing when I get to them, and then I still get my heal. Or, I go in to heal somebody, and then, I need to slingshot backwards. Did I fire out my burst fast enough? Did I charge it early enough? A lot of weird micro decisions, I think, would come across like this. So, you are, again, choosing between, which beam you're using, but also, when you're using them. You have to be much more conscious of your fly, which is why I kept her movement the same way as it is, because on live, I feel like you can just kind of do whatever you want, and it's really hard to punish. But now, Mercy doesn't get as much value out of it if she is the one making the wrong decision, not your team just kind of being unable to aim and unable to track her. Does that kind of make sense? So it puts a lot more value into fly, which is why I decreased the cooldown, but it also puts more of it into Mercy, for it to be a good ability rather than just, the enemy can't really hit this, right? That's kind of the big thing, and I think that would make her much more engaging and not as basically these in general, if they didn't change anything else about Mercy, I think these changes in general would make the majority of the fight, much more engaging. But, That's not the only thing that I've changed. Um, I have gotten rid of Res. Okay, fuck Res. I hate Res. It's such a bad ability. We are going to replace it with a an ability called Touch of Grace, which I will talk about in a second. But let's talk about a change to Kiriko first. So, spoiler alert: Touch of Grace has an element of a cleanse, but as a rule, Overwatch should not have multi-target cleanses. And I've talked about this for a little bit about Kiriko. I think a multi-target cleanse is really, really powerful and easy to get value out of. And it just like shuts so many things down. The characters that have the niche, like damage over time effects, it just completely stops that. So I really don't like the idea of just being able to completely negate an entire ultimate with one ability that's on a 13-second cooldown. I love Kiriko as a gameplay, like playing her, but I think that is a little much. So I'm gonna make it so Kiriko can only get one cleanse at a time, and it has to be a direct hit for it to cleanse. So that way it limits how many people it can cleanse to one, and it also means that she can't cleanse herself, so she's forced to TP. Yada yada yada. I think that would encourage more risk. It would give more risk to her taking duels, and it would also just kind of make the game a little healthier, in my opinion, for those niche heroes that have some of those. They call them niche heroes. They're like unique abilities, like the antis and the burns and all of that. So, with that being said, back to Touch of Grace. So, this ability is a cleanse, and it will give the receiver a short speed boost. And I'll tell you why. This is not really used for aggression. In order for this ability to be cast, you must be right next to your target, touching them, right? In order for it to cast, you must charge it up for a short amount of time. And this is important because while you're charging it, you can use your fly, but you cannot use your staff or your staff, either one of them. So you're kind of making the choice of like getting ready for the cleanse. So basically, what I wanted another savior ability. Mercy can swoop in, and you've been antied or whatever, and she swoops in. She gives you a nice cleanse, right? Now, what Mercy can do then is if she thinks that you're going to take something that she needs to cleanse, she can stop healing and damaging for a second, hold it cleanse, get ready for it, and then give it to you, right? So that she can give it to you right away. She can swoop in, give it to you, fly away, she's totally safe. Or, on reaction, she can try to save you and basically, how long res would take, she has to like hold it there for a second. She can try to do that with Touch of Grace. And it puts herself more at risk. She may potentially be out in the open, but she can still kind of react to it. And then, of course, I don't want there to be like full invulnerability like Rez has, so I put this little speed boost in there just so they could get around a corner, perhaps. I'm also open to a little bit of a heal, because if you play this character into some team that doesn't have an anti, then Touch of Grace may not be as worth it. Mercy may not be as worth it, because Cleanse, if it's an ability that mainly cleanses, then it's not going to do that much against most heroes. So maybe some kind of heal as well. I think that wouldn't be too bad. But basically, Mercy can charge this up while she's flying, and again, it gives you more decision making about like, okay, I'm gonna go for the cleanse, but that means I can't heal or do damage in that time. So, is it really worth it for me to use my cleanse here? Or should I just, back off, try not to, maybe just heal them through it? Maybe I damage whoever is aggressing on them to get them out of the way, to deter them from trying. So I think there's, again, a lot you can do with this. It's not... I like this solution. I like the idea of Mercy having to get close to her ally to give them a boost, some kind of like saving thing, or maybe an augment. I'm not sure. I I don't want there to be like cleanse creep that like every support now has a cleanse. But at the very least, like the idea that I had is that like no character is going to have more than one target cleanse on a moderately long cooldown, so that you can't just completely deny anti value, all the time, whatever. This would also allow life grip to be a cleanse, because it probably should, because it feels like it should, but it isn't. You know what I mean? Um, but yeah, that's kind of my idea with Touch of Grace. I'd kind of love to hear what you guys think about this one, because again, I'm afraid that it's worthless in certain comps. Like I want there to be multiple ways to use this ability, and that's why I kind of gave it the speed boost and the heal, so that you could use it aggressively, but it's probably not worth it in most scenarios. And yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking here. So let's go ahead and let's talk about the ult, which I don't like Valk. I really don't. I think it's just kind of boring. But I have actually decided to keep it. But it's gone through a lot of changes. Or it's not even gone through a lot of changes, that the changes I've made to Mercy have changed this, and I've given it something extra. So basically, it's going to work similarly to it does now, except healing no longer chains between allies. It just doesn't work that way. But Advancing Angel will count while you're in Valk, so you can effectively have an uptime of more damage and more healing the entire time you're in Valk, just by flying regularly forward. And also, I would think that when you actually choose to use your Guardian Angel cooldown while you're in Valk, it can have a little more extra like use. Basically, it just gives Mercy a little more healing, a little more damage, so she can do things and kind of be like an assassin. But again, since the cooldown of Guardian Angel is lower, it should stop her from flying around completely. And I would even like maybe make it so that she's slower when she's flying regularly, just to prevent her from being like an unkillable demon. And again, don't forget that she doesn't have her old passive anymore, so she's not going to be healing all that damage back. So it should be fine. She shouldn't be like an unkillable moth or anything. But the big thing that I've done here is that Rez has made its way back into her kit in a much more toned down fashion, and I'll tell you why. I feel like the Rez is just so tied with Mercy that there's really no way to get rid of it without losing a part of her. So what I've done is that when you're in Valk, you get one use of Rez, okay? But this is not a Rez like it is on Live, okay? It's not just you bring them back, you hold the hand up and you bring them back into the fight and yippee, now they're back forever. What this is that the Rez target will only stay out on the battlefield for as long as their respawn timer has left. So, if you res somebody with 5 seconds left on the respawn timer, they only have 5 seconds to do anything before they're sent right back to the spawn room. Basically, you're kind of creating like a ghost of the hero. Initially, when I made this, and I'll talk about this later, I had them so that they were untargetable. Totally scrap that. Basically, what I have is that they're going to get all their health back, but they cannot be healed, they cannot get over health, they cannot be cleansed, anything like that. Their health that they get, their health is what they have to do with, right? The other thing about them is that they cannot use abilities. Oh wait, no. They can use abilities. Sorry, I got my things together. So with that, they can use abilities, because I initially had it so that they couldn't, and then that would be like really uninteractive. Basically, they can use abilities, but they have just however much health that they are allotted. Nothing that can help them. If you have a queen and she shouts, she does not get over health from shout, right? Basically, I don't want Rez to just be like this free win button. This free like, oh, come back, no harm, no foul, right? Mercy now has to choose not only her target, but when she reses them. It's not just waiting for her moment. Now she's thinking, okay, I have my moment, but it's only like 5 seconds. Is it worth it to bring them back into the fight? And then they're just gone, right? And then if you get rezzed, it's kind of an interesting interaction of like, okay, is it now it's my mission to just fucking try to kill something, right? Like I'm just gonna go like feed my brains out and do like 0 damage because I'm gonna die anyway, so I might as well get some value in there. So yeah, I initially had it so that they couldn't use abilities, but they could be like healed or like they were untargetable. But that's just really boring. And like imagine if an untargetable Reaper was just in your backline. Or like you just res Mauga and he just like he just can't die. It didn't feel right. You know what I mean? Like just like so much damage and no like counterplay at all. Like if you res Tracer and she couldn't use her abilities, like what's the point? You would never ever res Tracer, right? So I wanted there to be some reason to res people. Um, maybe you res your Venture and they dig underground and just get this big burst damage before they leave the fight. Like just use all their abilities, like cash out, and then like they're back in spawn room and they're coming back, but they've gotten a little bit of value. I think that's much more interesting. Like you could res Ori and like she'll get damage reduction. Maybe that's a little broken now that I'm saying it, but that's kind of the idea. Is that it's not this like they're not completely back like they used to be. They're not invulnerable or anything, but they are much weaker and much more susceptible to just be like, oh, and it's not as bad as like, oh, we didn't get the res, oh god, now we're down. It's like, oh, we didn't get the res, let's just shoot them. You know what I mean? It's not as bad. Or like, oh, we didn't get the res, let's kite for 5 seconds. And then I know I killed them 5 seconds ago. Let's just wait it out. And then when that's done, they're still down. So it still does the same idea of like keeping your team in the fight more when you get a res off, but it's not nearly as oppressive or valuable. And I think that's like really important. And again, what I wanted to do was I gave Valkyrie a little bit more to work with so that if you're not able to get a res off or like anything like that, then there's a reason to use Valkyrie. You could choose to use Valkyrie early. Mercy could pop Valkyrie just to kill somebody. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of what I was going for here. I think this is a really interesting idea that could be used on either a different character as like this ability, or it could just be used on a completely new character as like something they get when they die. You know what I mean? They kind of get like a second life. Like I like to say Karthus from League, although I have no idea what I'm talking about. All I know is that he just kind of stays around for a couple seconds after he dies. So yeah, that's really really what I was targeting. So not completely getting res was really difficult to try and find like the nice sweet spot about like how to make it work, but I think I've come up with something that isn't too oppressive and is much more interesting for Mercy, more decision making about when and who to res. Okay, so let's talk about some alternatives and problems. After all of that, I still don't really know what's stopping her from turtling, to be honest. The short range is part of it. But the reason I brought the cooldown for Guardian Angel down was primarily so that she doesn't just fly forward, get one burst out and cancel it, and then just get it back in 2 seconds and get it again. I wanted that kind of playstyle to be not usable, right? Like I want you to be like bursting like in and out and using it naturally, not just like standing behind a wall and kind of abusing that fact. And I want you to get some kind of like macro, I'm going to do a longer fly so I can get more bursts and more healing, right? More like, what's it called? Charged or extra healing. That's kind of what I was going for. I think what I've done enough will stop turtling, and that would be like a bad playstyle of just pocketing and waiting. Especially since she can't damage boost. I think that's really part of it too. But just in theory, I feel like I should bring this up because there's a world where it doesn't work like I thought it does, and like that is still a viable way to play. And again, same thing hoping naturally she'll still want to swap targets, but none of the mechanics that I have like actively encourage it directly or dissuade her from pocketing. It's just kind of like I really hope that the changes I made would it would play better not doing that. Um, I'm watching Fly cooldown very, very closely because a lot of her power is indirectly related to Fly. So if it's too off, if she has it too often, she's too strong. But if she doesn't have it enough, she's probably like way too weak. So that's something I'm considering and thinking about. But right now we'll just keep it. We'll just say it's a little shorter than what it is on live. And again, I already talked about it. I initially gave her old movement back, but I wanted there to be more ways to advance and more decision making about like, or I guess like I wanted there to be more decision making about like keeping her alive and going backwards. Because as it stands, only when you pop up with super jump in the old movement would she ever be flying backwards, right? Which would mean that whenever she has fly up, she would just kind of always have the advancing angel active, which doesn't really make sense with the decision making. So I thought it brought much more decision making into Guardian Angel to keep it like the slingshot that it is. And also adds a little bit of like skill to it so that you could slingshot forward and then turn your camera back around when you slingshotted backwards and like kind of like keep damage pressure or healing pressure up on one target while you go in and out of cover, right? I think that's pretty cool. Maybe you go in and then you cleanse them and then you turn around and you look that way and you get some damage while you're flying. I think that would be really cool. Or you know what? The alternative is just like fuck this whole thing. Fuck the changing the damage and changing the heal. What if it just locked out after a couple seconds so that you were forced to swap targets? I don't think that would feel very good, but it would at very least like make Mercy have to look at other people. I think that is the coward's way out, and it does not fix anything about Mercy other than that one specific issue. But, you know, when we're realistically looking at it, what is the most likely? A full rework where she gets multiple new abilities, or they just add a little timer like Zenyatta? I don't know. So yeah, that's really what I have for the most of this. Again, I don't like Mercy very much. She can be kind of fun to move around in, but as it stands, her kit is really frustrating and kind of limiting to what she can actually do, even though it feels like she should be able to do much more. So yeah, that's what I want to do. Just bring back some of that savior element. I wanted to put a lot more decision making in all the little things that she does. Again, like I don't want it to be a super mechanically demanding character, but being able to think about every single guardian angel you do could really show you who is a better Mercy than other ones. You know what I mean? Like, what makes this Mercy stand out from this one? Well, it's their guardian angel usage, right? That's kind of what I was going for, and I think that would really make Mercy still viable and easy to pick up, but increase her skill ceiling much more. All right, if you got this far, thank you so much for watching the video. I will go ahead, I'll remind you about those YouTube things, but really, if you wouldn't mind, just check in the description. I've got a bunch of different socials you can check me out. I've just opened a Discord that you can come join my community of people and talk about various things and also get maybe some coaching. I've also got a Twitch stream that I stream very often, probably at least 5 times a week. That's also down there as well. So if you're interested in either of those, I also have a TikTok and YouTube Shorts on this account. All the support helps. I really appreciate it.